Austin Rivers says that 30 NBA players could go play in the NFL today. I can't just let this disrespect slide. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day, every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions do apply. We wrap up today's episode with a look at Maryland Eastern Shore attempting to create the culture that they desperately have lacked through their D1 history. Prior to that, Candice Dupree is the new Tennessee State women's basketball head coach, and she brings in a line of success with her. But it's Feature Friday. I wanted to have a little bit of fun. Let's call it Fun Friday instead of Feature. But Austin Rivers made a statement that set people up for conversation over the last couple of days. And I said Friday is the best time to do it. Let's have a little bit of fun before we go into the weekend. Austin Rivers, the son of Glenn Rivers, the current head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, says he got 30 NBA players who can go play in the NFL. I know this isn't Locked On NFL. I know this isn't any Locked On team in the NFL. This is a collegiate show. But I thought that I put a little bit of a spin on it and look at it from a more broad perspective. Because if you ask me, this is an extremely disrespectful take that Austin Rivers is not alone in believing. The idea that 30 NBA players can go play in the NFL, simple and plain, is disrespectful to the sport of football. So let's break it down between basketball and football. I wanted to have a little bit of fun today. And though I'm using the word disrespect, those two things kind of sound like they contradict each other. Addressing this is fun for me. So you know what? Let's do it. There is a reason why NBA players, or even just basketball players in general, the idea that Austin Rivers has is not his alone. The idea that Austin Rivers has is one that I've heard since I was in high school when I actually played football. It's this misconception that because you're athletic, you can go do it. And what it really boils down to is the utter disrespect for the skill set that is required to play football. A lot of people will sit here and talk to you about the physicality that NBA players will not be able to handle. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. Though there's a lot of validity to the claim, that ain't the route I want to go. You can go hear 50 other people talk about it. The truth of the matter is, if I tell you they can't handle that physicality, they're going to say, yes, I can. Okay, whatever. The skill set required to play football is not one that you have. You're athletic. You're athletic. Yes, I give that. I'm not going to take that, because the second part of what he said is 30 NFL players can't go play in the NBA. And I agree. I agree with that. I don't think that the premise for a lot of people is that they think that one skill set translates to the other because they're just looking at their athletic ability. And we're aware, we as in football players are aware that there's more that comes with the game of basketball than just being athletic. There's more that comes with the game of basketball than just being tall. That's another disadvantage that a lot of NFL players have, because the height is different. But the height that you have in basketball is not so beneficial all the time to football. Let's just be real. Let's get into some of the things, because I want to make sure I don't just go on a tangent. Because if you ask me, the reason that basketball players believe that their athleticism alone would carry them into the football realm is because they stopped playing football in high school when you could be an athlete and dominate. They stopped playing football in Little League when you could be an athlete and dominate. They stopped playing football when the coach said put the best athlete at quarterback and let him make magic. So when that's your real reference point of the opposite sport, yeah, of course you probably think that, well, as long as I'm athletic, I can make it happen. But there's so many other skills. It's a fraudulent belief. It's like Chris Tucker in Rush Hour 2, I believe. When he held up that money and he put it up to the fire and it burned, he said it's fake. That's what this is. It's a take that sounds good. It's a take that makes sense. Yeah, you got great athletes. I'm not going to say any names. But when you really think about it, you can't do it. What skill set do you have? And this is something I'm passionate about as a football guy. I'm a through and through football guy. So you have to forgive. This is real raw emotion right now. There is a stigma of football players. I'm going to say high school football players, because that's where I stopped, that can't shoot. They just play defense and rebound. And I apologize to every former every former football player in high school that could shoot, because I'm a part of the problem. I'm creating and extending that narrative. I can't shoot. I can rebound and play defense. So they look at me like, yep, that's an NFL player. Like, I've heard that statement before, and I can't even knock it. But the thing is, I respect the ability of a dribble package, the ability to finish, the ability to facilitate, the ability to slide your feet and defend, the ability to contest. I respect everything that goes into basketball. And I think a lot of people do, because the skill set is right there. But some people just see football as run and hit, crash dummy sport. That ain't what it is. See, there's a reason that everybody who thinks they can translate from basketball to football wants to be a pass catcher, for the most part. You ain't got the hips to go play cornerback. You ain't got the hips to be a defensive back. You ain't got the toughness to go across the middle, if we really going to get into that. But I said that I wouldn't. You don't have the intelligence to look off the quarterback and then fall back into the zone. You don't have the ability, the skill set to block shed. You don't have the skill set to have multiple pass rush moves. You don't have the skill set to set somebody up on the edge. You don't have the skill set for so many things. It's not just run and catch. You don't have the ability to get off the press. If you line up on the line of scrimmage and get pressed by a cornerback, you're not equipped for that. You are an amazing athlete. But when you say that 30 NBA players, when you just say that 30 NBA players could translate to the NFL, it's solely based off of athleticism. I won't take that away from you, but let's not act like there's not a large skill set required to play the game of football. And there's also a reason you only think you can play one or two positions. Maybe three. Maybe you'll have a safety. But for the most part, y'all not. There's so many things that the basketball player is not doing. And that's no disrespect to you. I think we just need to realize that the skill set required for each sport don't necessarily align. I can admit that my skill set to shed blocks does not lead to me being able to go into the lane, drive, and finish. It just doesn't. But your ability to drive into the lane and finish does not lend itself to actually setting up a double move. I don't think you can appropriately set up a double move. There are so many things that an NBA player trying to go into the NFL cannot do. It's a different game. It's a skillful game. And when you say things like you got 30 NBA players who could go do it, it's extremely disrespectful. And I couldn't let it slide. Now, as we push forward, let's get off of the disrespecting. Let's get into praising. Candice Dupree is bringing a long line and a long tie to success to Tennessee State women's basketball. So let's break down her qualifications as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the best place for all your last-minute ticket deals. Maybe you have a concert that you want to go to today. Yes, today. As you're listening to me, you can go on Gametime right now and find that concert. Get the last-minute ticket deals. Maybe they'll be 30, 40 bucks. A lot of times these tickets go down as the date gets closer to the event. So go ahead and go on Gametime. It's very simple. If you download the app and you use the code LOCKEDONCollege after creating an account, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. It doesn't just have to be concerts. It can be comedy shows. Obviously, this is a sports show. It can be a sporting event. Maybe your team is in the playoffs right now. Your favorite artist, your favorite comedian, your favorite team. Just find a way to go see them. Doesn't matter where it is, who it is, or what it is. Just go ahead and go onto the Gametime app, download it, create an account, and use the code Locked On College. You get $20 off, and you might even be able to take part in some of their flash sales. You never know, you never know, you never know until you download the app. So go ahead and do that today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this the first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. It's the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day, live sports show on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out today. We're getting away from the emotion. I think that I covered most of what I wanted to say. Everything in me is trying to run through my notes and see if I checked all the boxes, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to scroll to the section where we break down the long line of success that Candice Dupree is bringing to Tennessee State. She is their new women's basketball head coach. With Candice Dupree coming into Tennessee State, she's bringing a long line of success, and it starts off with the coaches that she's been coached or surrounded by. In college at Temple, she was coached by Dawn Staley. She's coming over to Tennessee State from the Spurs, where we know that she was connected to Greg Popovich. These are two of the greatest coaches in their lane ever, right? Now, of course, her mindset is a little bit different because it's a coach to assistant coach relationship as opposed to a coach to player relationship. But maybe she still has the ability to reach out to Dawn Staley. Maybe she still has the ability to pick her brain. And we know that she was learning from Pop. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh, wow, you're next to one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time. You're next to one of the most iconic and greatest women's basketball coaches in the collegiate ranks of all time. Well, I think that you might have been able to pick up a thing or two. I would hope that you picked up a thing or two from Pop. I would hope that being around him, you were able to soak something up. Even if you didn't do that, because let's be real. I don't know what her dreams and aspirations were outside of the game of basketball as a player. But even if she wanted to be a coach, she didn't think that was on the way soon. And it wasn't. It wasn't. We get into that in a little bit. It wasn't. So everything that she was taking from Dawn Staley is probably about being a player. Now, maybe you can reflect on it and be like, oh, she coached me this way, so I was able to learn this, that, and the fifth. But at the same time, it's a hit or miss, but I would hope that she has her number now. She can reach out. Hey, I'm doing this. So overall, that's the way that I personally look at it, right? But here's the thing about Dupree is this, for her move to Tennessee State, is a new beginning on two fronts. One, she's never been a head coach. She actually has very limited coaching experience. She started coaching in 2022, I believe, maybe 2021. 2021 in the earliest. She was still in the W at 2021. So I think maybe 2022 is when she got her start in the coaching development program. You're looking at 3 years at the max, 21, 22, 23, 24 still going on. She obviously is here now. So, or even that's going into 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24. Those are 3 full seasons. So she's coming off of at most 3 seasons of even coaching. So this is a new front for her. But then also, all of those 2 to 3 seasons that I'm naming, they come on the men's basketball ranks. So it's a little bit different, right? It doesn't mean you can't translate. We've seen Becky Hammond. Becky Hammond went from the Spurs. I think she was actually the coach of the summer league. Don't get me quoted on that, right? What Easy say? Don't quote me, boy, because I ain't said. But she was a part of that Spurs system, and then she went over to the Las Vegas Aces and did her thing. Like, she's been crazy over there. So it's not as if playing or coaching, I should say, in the NBA all of a sudden doesn't prepare you for women's basketball, or you can't translate. That would be ridiculous. And when you look at what she did for the Spurs, Candice Dupree, because we're moving on back to Dupree, Candice Dupree was a developmental coach. She was first off in the coach's development program, which allowed her to work with draft prospects. So that's all about developing and trying to hone certain things as they prepare for the professional ranks. Then she became an assistant coach on the Spurs Summer League team. Then she got called up to the main roster. And with that, you're looking, And with that move up to the actual, the San Antonio Spurs, she became a player developmental coach or player development coach. So what do you think she did? She developed players. And I think that what I look at when I'm thinking about new coaches, especially those that don't have head coaching experience, I begin to look at what else have you done in your career that can translate to the job. And for me, Candice Dupree's development experience tells me that she can do this. So this is something that lends itself to coaching on the collegiate ranks in women's basketball because they stay for multiple years. This isn't like men's ball where 1 year they gone, 2 years and they gone maybe. Women stay in college longer. I think there might be a rule behind it, and especially when you're looking at on the HBCU level, it's just going to double down because a lot of these players stay around. My chair is squeaky. My chair is loud. You probably couldn't even hear on the microphone, but I hear it to me. But I just think that when you look at her ability to develop players or her experience developing players and being asked to do that, it creates confidence that on the collegiate ranks, where you're really going to have to develop and you're going to work with players for 2-3 years because you're still going to hit the portal. Like a lot of players will come in from the portal. So let's just say 2 to 3 years that you're working with a lot of players. That's something that I want to see. But then also, when I speak about Dupree's success, it's not just who she surrounds herself with. It's not just, oh, she was with Pop, she was with Staley. As a player, she had a lot of success. She was in a WNBA for a decade and a half. When you look at what she's done as an individual, she's a 7-time all-star player, right? You're looking at top 5 and made field goals and points in WNBA history, 7th in rebounds. When you look at her team success, she's won a championship. She's done so many things in the game of basketball that just boiling it down to she's been around some great coaches to be a great coach. No, she's been around great coaches, great culture, and great performances as an individual and as a team. So when I'm looking at this long line of success that I hope translates to Tennessee State, it's good company, it's individual success, and it's a championship, which is what you're obviously trying to reach with the Lady Tigers. It's just that simple. Candice Dupree is a candidate that you should be extremely excited for because of what she's done in her career as a player, who she's been around. And then also, I think that the things that she's done, there's certain traits there that translate. That's what we speak about with prospects. Do you have the traits that will translate? And I believe that the traits of player development will translate for Candice Dupree. Now, as we push forward, one coach is moving in, one coach is moving out. And I got a question. How do you build culture at a school that has no real history of winning? That's my question that we'll explore as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go, and this is the game that absolutely scratches my competitive itch. When I'm sitting here thinking, man, I ain't really went out to play ball in a long time. I ain't really played the game against somebody in a long time. I take out my phone, go to Monopoly Go. I say, all right, what's going on? I need somebody to land on my property. It's just a mobile twist to a classic in Monopoly, right? You have emojis that keep you visually entertained. You have the ability to play with friends. You have the ability to play against your friends like the classic Monopoly typically does, because there is no camaraderie in Monopoly. It's just actually sitting there and playing. Like, yeah, you might enjoy that, but that's about it. But in this game, I can go set up with my friends to go take money from somebody else's vault because I'm running a little bit low. Or maybe I just want to have fun and see if I can take some money from my friend's vault. All of that is an option, and all of those are things that I have personally done on Monopoly Go. So whether you want to be camaraderie or whether you want to be combative, you can go ahead and go to Monopoly Go on the Google Play Store or the Apple or the App Store and download your app today. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Maryland Eastern Shore is in the search of a new men's basketball head coach, and the question comes to me, how do you build a winning culture? Better yet, how much patience is required when trying to build a winning culture, or just build a culture, period, at a place where victory has not resided? And I don't know any other way to put it. Maryland Eastern Shore has not been a good basketball team as a D1 program. They just haven't. And we're going to put finances aside because That's just not a conversation I want to have every single time. I understand that it's a part of it. They don't have a football team. The finances are impacted. I get all of that. But you have to work with what you have to work with in this situation. So let's apply understanding the circumstances. How do you build a winning program? How much patience? That's what I want. How much patience do you want to have? Because they just got rid of Jason Crafton, and I don't agree with the decision. In no way do I agree with the decision to get rid of this coach, because I look at the success that he had recently, and for you to get rid of that when you haven't seen that in a long time, I just can't. I just can't. I just can't. And I'm speaking from a basketball perspective. If something happened behind the scenes, I'm not speaking on that. Obviously, you don't. Obviously, you got to get rid of the guy if that's what happened. But I don't know how to answer this question. How do you build a winning culture? How much patience do you have? I think you got to give a guy a lot of chance to fail, and that's only if he shows the ability to reach heights, which I saw Coach Crafton do. This is a quote. This is a quote from Crafton. And this came out after he had a really good season. So this is March of last year, excuse me. The most difficult job in getting things turned around is that there's no winning tradition. Not a lot of reference points. We're on a mission to be the first team in history of the Division I program to go to the Division I NCAA tournament. We're creating everything as we go. So the most difficult thing has been just fighting the lack of culture that's been here and trying to create a culture on the fly. You do that by bringing in the right people. Crafton was at UMass for 4 seasons, and he started in the 2019-2020 season. Then they missed the 20-21 season due to COVID, right? In 2020, the season that ended in 2020, you go 5-7. In 2022, 11-16. In 2023, 18-13. In 2024, 9-20. If we're talking basketball, you've seen a guy who goes up each year and then he had a drop off. You got to let him drop off. You got to give him time to come back from that. Because I understand 11-16 don't look great. 18-13 may not be that impressive to you. I think that's a solid season. But when you're looking at the framework of who University of Maryland and Eastern Shore is, they haven't been good in a long time. They haven't been good as a Division I team. In 2023, Coach Crafton went 18-13. Not only was that his best year, that was the best year that they've had in nearly 50 years. This is the best winning percentage that they've had since being a Division I program. I can't co-sign getting rid of him because he had a bad year the next year. You have no winning culture. When somebody has established not only a winning season, you've only had 3 winning seasons in the last 43 years. He had the best one. I can't co-sign getting rid of him from a basketball standpoint because you had this level of success, even though you had a let-off, like a drop-off, a letdown the following season. I got to give you a chance to get things right. That's me. I've seen you start off at the bottom. I've seen you increase. I've seen you increase to a height we hadn't seen in a long time. My parents might not have seen that. Like, there's some people whose parents may not have seen that. They grown folks with kids who've never seen this level of success. And then the next year, you're not as good and you're gone. I do not believe that you can do that as a school that ain't won nothing ever. I'm not just talking about recently how we talk trash, man. You ain't never won nothing. Really mean in the last 15 years, you ain't been good, right? You ain't been on nothing. This team literally hasn't done anything. They've never made it to the NCAA tournament. They've had 3 winning seasons in 43 years. If we're talking about building culture, how much patience do you have to have? You have to have the patience to allow somebody to fail. If they show a certain height, you have to give them grace. The leash should be extended as soon as you show something that gives me hope. The minute you give me hope, I'm giving you a lot more free reign. And maybe that's accepting mediocrity, but when I'm just accustomed to poverty, mediocrity don't feel that bad. It's a starting point. When you're when you're accustomed to poverty, mediocrity is not that bad. It allows you to at least establish the floor of being average, of being okay. 3 seasons, winning seasons in 43 years. I cannot stress that enough. In the best one of the trio, the best of the triumvirate, you got rid of a year later. I don't know how much patience that you need to build a winning culture when you never had that at your school as a D1 program. But I do not believe that that is the way to go. Now, on the next week's episode, we'll be looking at Kai Cole because the Norfolk State sprinter is going to perform at the Olympic trials and has a chance to possibly make the Olympic team. So let's break that down on Monday's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.